Prince Harry has admitted he did not know unconscious racist bias existed until he was living a day or a week in my wife's shoes following his marriage to Meghan Markle. The Duke of Sussex, 36, spoke about racism in an interview with Black Lives Matter activist Patrick Hutchins for GQ magazine and admitted his upbringing and education did not equip him to understand the issue. Harry said, "Once you realize or you feel a little bit uncomfortable, then the onus is on you to go out and educate yourself, because ignorance is no longer an excuse. An unconscious bias, from my understanding, having the upbringing and the education that I had no idea what it was. I had no idea it existed. And then, sad as it is to say, it took me many, many years to realize it, especially then living a day or a week in my wife's shoes." Harry spoke from his £11 million home in Montecito, California, during a candid chat with activist Mr. Hutchinson for the GQ Heroes Conference, which runs this week. He also criticized the 25,000 complaints over a Black Lives Matter inspired dance routine on Britain's Got Talent last month, which saw a figure representing a white police officer kneeling on dancer Ashley Banjo, echoing the killing of black man George Floyd in the US, which sparked protests. Harry said, "We, Meghan and I, spoke to him, Banjo, shortly after that whole process, that whole moment in his life and diversity's life. But what was interesting there, from what I was told, was that there were a couple of thousand complaints that came straight after the performance. But it was 3 days later or even a week later that it got up to 20,000. So you start to think, well, how many people actually watch the performance that have complained, or have they just had their opinion inflamed by what they've read?" The image of superhero father Mr. Hutchinson rescuing suspected far-right protester Bryn Mawr during London race violence in June became an iconic photograph during the BLM demonstrations. In the interview, Harry also said, the Duke also spoke about the struggle of lockdown especially for men, saying, "For so many people, but men especially, I guess, everyone's been suffering from some form of isolation over the last 8-9 months. But for men who are isolated by themselves, this can be a really dark place, unless you know the different solutions or different distractions that you can put into your life, whether it's going for a great walk or a run or just doing something that keeps you mentally and physically fit. So I love that." Also in the interview, Mr. Hutchinson admitted he got into a few scrapes with some of my friends, and Harry replied, "Everyone gets themselves into trouble at some point. It's how you learn from it." Harry also gave his thoughts about saying the wrong thing after Mr. Hutchinson told him, "Everything is up for discussion, because Terry's so much to talk about and people need to not be afraid. I think that can be a part of it. For some white people, I think they can be afraid. They're scared of saying the wrong thing, possibly." The Duke said, "Not everyone's going to get it right. And from what I've seen, people are desperately trying to get it right, and even when trying to get it right, get it massively wrong. And as long as everyone comes at it with an element of, as you say, compassion, because it is scary for people, and it is the case that you're probably going to get it wrong, you just jump in both feet first. And you may still get it wrong, but I guarantee you there'll be the right support structure and people around to go, you know what? A word of warning, maybe do this and don't say that." The interview was carried out last Monday, 6 weeks after GQ approached Harry to ask him if he wanted to chat with Mr. Hutchinson as part of the magazine's coverage supporting Black History Month. The image of superhero father Mr. Hutchinson rescuing suspected far-right protester Bryn Mawr during London race violence in June went viral around the world. Mr. Mawr, a former policeman from Basingstoke, Hampshire, was hurt in a brawl during the protest that saw him join thousands of people thronging the Capitol to defend statues. Some far-right thugs attacked police and made Nazi salutes and monkey gestures at anti-racism protesters. Rival activists then began looking for revenge. Mr. Mawr, wearing a Millwall football shirt and said to be swaying, was confronted near Waterloo Station and was heard telling activists, "F Black Lives Matter." He was slapped, he fell over, then was picked up and helped by a 26-year-old musician known as Tychmatic. But someone else sent Mr. Mawr flying with a kick. Pictures showed Tychmatic escorting Mr. Mawr down a set of stairs on London's South Bank when a member of the mob sent the former police officer hurtling by kicking him in the back. Mr. Hutchinson, a 6 feet 1 inch personal trainer from Croydon, South London, then rescued the man as he was being set upon by the angry crowd. He was described as representing the best of human behaviour by MPs, and his daughters said his actions will help to create a brighter future. Mr. Hutchinson had travelled to London with 4 friends with the aim of stopping young anti-racism protesters from being drawn into confrontations with far-right thugs. The former IT analyst had been due to babysit but answered a call from a friend assembling a team to help keep the peace on the capital streets. Asked about his actions, Mr. Hutchinson told Harry, "We were pleased that we'd been able to avert a serious situation. Yeah, I would do it for anybody and I would do it time and time again. It's just not something you think about. I know you've been in the armed forces and I know you've seen some things that lots of us haven't seen. So for me, I don't know, it's just a mentality. It's something you just have within you. You don't worry about your own personal self or well-being. You just go in and do what you have to do and then afterwards you think, oh, my gosh. How did I do that? But when adrenaline kicks in, there's no fear." Mr. Hutchinson, who was born in Coventry but raised in London's Battersea, has 4 children aged 8, 11, 25 and 30, as well as 4 grandchildren. Harry and Mr. Hutchinson also spoke about the 1972 ITV sitcom Love Thy Neighbour, which has faced much criticism for its handling of race issues. The image of superhero Father Patrick Hutchinson rescuing suspected far-right protester Bryn Male during London race violence in June went viral around the world. Mr. Male, a former policeman from Basingstoke, Hampshire, was hurt in a brawl during the protest that saw him join thousands of pounds thronging the capital to defend statues. Some far-right thugs attacked police and made Nazi salutes and monkey gestures at anti-racism protesters. Rival activists then began looking for revenge. Mr. Male, wearing a Millwall football shirt and said to be swaying, was confronted near Waterloo Station and was heard telling activists, "F Black Lives Matter." He was slapped, he fell over, then was picked up and helped by a 26-year-old musician known as Tychmatic. But someone else sent Mr. Male flying with a kick. Pictures showed Tychmatic escorting Mr. Male down a set of stairs on London's South Bank when a member of the mob sent the former police officer hurtling by kicking him in the back. Mr. Hutchinson, a 6 feet 1 inch personal trainer from Croydon, South London, then rescued the man as he was being set upon by the angry crowd. He was described as representing the best of human behavior by MPs, and his daughters said his actions will help to create a brighter future. Mr. Hutchinson had travelled to London with 4 friends with the aim of stopping young anti-racism protesters from being drawn into confrontations with far-right thugs. The former IT analyst had been due to babysit but answered a call from a friend assembling a team to help keep the peace on the capital streets. Mr. Hutchinson said, "If I sat and watched that now, I'd absolutely be horrified. But I watched that, not so long ago. I sat and watched that, even enjoyed it in parts. So that tells you that we will make progress, and we do make progress, and 10 years from now there will be progress." Last week, Harry said the world was in the midst of a global crisis of hate and misinformation because of social media. But the Duke said now more than ever there was an overwhelming desire for truth and the media had an important role to play. He made his comments during a Time 100 talk with wife Meghan, who spoke about how bad voices on social media were so loud and damaging. She admitted she and her husband don't speak tech but said they know the experience of being a human being and the pain and suffering and joy that has come from this World Wide Web. Earlier this month, the Duchess of Sussex appeared to take a swipe at the royal family, referring to Buckingham Palace as the institution. Meghan, 39, also admitted her decision to leave for the US was not a popular one but insisted that it was the best one for her herself, Prince Harry and Archie. Despite the reaction to many of her and Harry's recent public pronouncements, particularly over the forthcoming US presidential election, which even prompted a stinging rebuke from President Trump, Meghan claimed she was cautious of saying anything too controversial in public for fear of putting son Archie at risk. Referring to her determination to make the world a better place for her son, she said, "At the same time, I am cautious of putting my family in a position of risk by certain things, and so I try to be rather very clear with what I say and to not make it controversial, but instead to talk about things that seem fairly straightforward, like exercising your right to vote." Referencing motherhood, she added, "It's interesting because my gut is that it makes you more courageous. It makes you so concerned for the world they're going to inherit, and so the things that you're able to tolerate on your own are not the same. For you go every single day, how can I make this better for him? How can I make this world better for Archie? And that is a shared belief between my husband and I?" She added, As a parent I can enjoy all the fun and silliness and games with my son, but I wouldn't be able to feel proud of myself as a mom if I didn't know that I wasn't doing my part to make it a better place for him. On her plans for the future, the Duchess said she was excited to be back home in the States, and enjoying engaging and interacting with people with boots on the ground back at home. Prince Harry was opening the GQ Heroes Conference in conversation with Patrick Hutchins, and the full interview features in GQ magazine.